Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
Well. Isn't it amazing what happens over a weekend sometimes? Isn't it amazing what happens, what we learn? I should say, it is amazing what confirmation we get of what we suspect. Greetings, my friends, and welcome. It's the Rush Limbaugh program here on the Excellence in Broadcasting Network. Our telephone number, if you want to be on the program, 800-282-2882. The email address, lrushbaugh@eibnet.com. Okay, first on the Gorsuch nomination, the Democrats, Chuck Schumer, is confirmed now to have enough votes to stop the confirmation of Judge Gorsuch without the nuclear option. So it is reported. The news is that Judge Gorsuch will not get the 60-vote threshold to go to a full vote on the confirmation. We've got reports of some Democrats voting to confirm him. We've got, I think Susan Collins has signaled a Republican she's going to vote against him, which, believe me, makes no sense. It just absolutely no sense. Mitch McConnell assured everybody on Meet the Depressed yesterday that Gorsuch is going to get confirmed and it's going to happen by Friday, and that means if they have to pull the nuclear option, they're going to do it, which the Democrats know. It is silly for the Democrats to force the nuclear option on this nominee. I tell you, folks, I know this goes against the grain of the daily soap opera narrative. I mean, when you turn on mainstream news, what I'm about to say goes against what anybody concludes watching just a few minutes of news. And I think things are imploding on the Democrats, and I actually think this is one of the reasons why the media is so desperate. Because one of the things that despite all the minutia and detail here, in the real world, the things the Democrat Party believes in are failing all over the world, not just here in the United States. The Obama administration was an economic disaster. It was an economic failure. Liberalism, socialism around the world is imploding. The Democrats are losing power in every election, and I think that's part of the panic. They want us to believe that the behavior in panic is rooted in an absolute outraged offense over this president that we have. This is just unacceptable. And some maniac like Trump, this so out of the ordinary, out of the norm, has to be stopped. I don't think that's what it is. I mean, it's part of it. But I think there's a much larger panic that is taking over the Democrat Party, and it's going to implode on them. And I'll tell you, one of the areas it's going to implode is this entire effort they have made to tie Trump's election to Russian malfeasance or hacking. That is about to blow up in their face. In fact, it may already have. It's just that you don't find this news yet in much of the mainstream media. Pulling out all the stops here on Gorsuch politically makes no sense. But it does make sense if the Democrats' lunatic maniac base is demanding it and threatening never to send the Democrats any money ever again. Then that would explain why they're willing to fall on the sword here, because this is not the nominee that you want to force the nuclear option on. This is because once the nuclear option is pulled, it's pulled. And once the rule is changed, it's changed. It's not changed per nominee. It's changed. And if they force this, then all they're going to need in future Supreme Court nominees is 51 votes. Trump could nominate somebody they literally despise, somebody that could be the most outrageous choice in the world, and they're not going to be able to stop that nominee if they force McConnell to pull the nuclear option. Now, I'm going to get more into detail on that as the program unfolds, but I want to circle back here to the story that just won't go away, and it won't go away because the Democrats have continued to try to make something out of nothing. Even, that bobblehead figure, Adam Shifty Schiff, the pencil neck. Not affectionately, here's the pencil neck. This guy last week went out there and said there is evidence of Russian collusion. He went out there and said it. In an act of total desperation, it turns out that Devin Nunes has been running rings around the Democrats, and it looks like they've known it all along. And the effort to get Nunes to, quote-unquote, recuse himself, chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, or the effort to get rid of him in some other way, obviously was undertaken to stop what he is doing and what he is learning. But yesterday on the Sunday shows, pencil neck Adam Schiff had to grudgingly admit yet again that there is still not one shred of evidence of any collusion between Trump and the Russians. Not a shred. This is after last week making the announcement that there was evidence. He just couldn't help himself. He just couldn't contain himself. These people are living in a dreamland where they're hoping that everything they suspect is true, just remains to be found. And he just screwed up and couldn't help himself and went ahead and announced it when he didn't have any evidence for it. And it's a sign of how out of control these people are and unhinged. And I don't use those terms lightly. I'm not just coming up with descriptive phrases. They genuinely are out of control. And they genuinely are unhinged. Now, I don't know if Adam Schiff was embarrassed at all. I don't know if these people are capable of it. But it helps somebody like him when you know the media is going to do everything they can to cover for you. But he had to admit, after all of this, folks, after all of this, we now know that Trump has been surveilled for a year. We now know that the Obama administration was responsible for the unmasking. We now know that it was Susan Rice who lied on 5 Sunday shows about Benghazi. We know that it was Susan Rice who requested the unmasking of all of these Trump officials. We now know that what I suspected all along, and I'm not alone, that was happening indeed did happen, that Russians were surveilled and that they were talking to Americans. The transcript of the conversations was turned over to people in the Obama administration, such as Mike Flynn, and there are others. And now Susan Rice has been fingered as one of the sources who asked that these people be unmasked so that details of the conversations could be leaked when they were leaked. But these people were not targets of the surveillance. They are never to be identified. And we now know that it was the Obama administration. We got to go back to that story where Obama, when he left office, proudly said, not one scandal in my administration. Scandal-free, 8 years. Not so fast. So Schiff has to eat dirt. Remember, James Comey testified the Russians just wanted Hillary to lose. So why would they involve Trump in their scheme? The Russians know their calls are monitored by U.S. intelligence agencies. Why would they risk their effort to defeat Hillary by colluding with Trump's people? If that had come out before the election, she would have won for sure. In fact, everything that was known today, it has been known for quite a while by people in the intelligence community, by people at the FBI. The real scandal here, and it's becoming increasingly clear, is that the Obama administration weaponized politically our intelligence services against the Republicans and against Trump. I, for one, am not surprised. The Obama administration weaponized everything else to use against the GOP, from the IRS to NOAA, to any of these agencies, EPA, involving climate change. So here's where we are. In bullet point fashion, details to come, here is where we are. This is what we know in this developing blockbuster story about the Obama White House. And it is a story about the Obama White House. It is not a story about Trump and the Russians. We know that the Obama regime surveilled Trump's transition team. We know now that the Obama White House unmasked people who were not targets of legitimate surveillance and investigations. We know now that the Obama White House illegally leaked protected information. And by the way, we knew this long ago. The media is our source. The drive-by media reported all of this. We know that there had to be unmasking. We know that there had to be leaking. The media proudly told us that sources who could not be identified, blah, 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 fed them data. We know now that the media was complicit. And here's a little detail. Mike Cernovich reports in his story on all this today that Maggie Haberman at the New York Times has known for 2 days that Susan Rice was behind the unmasking and sat on it to protect President Obama. That's an assertion made by Mike Cernovich on his webpage today. There are 2 stories on this, one by Eli Lake at Bloomberg, the other Mike Cernovich. And he specifically claims that Maggie Haberman, the New York Times, has known it was Susan Rice for 48 hours and sat on it. Much like Newsweek sat on the story of Monica Lewinsky and Barack Obama and then eventually spiked the story, leading the way to the Drudge Report. We know that Susan Rice lied about her knowledge of this illegal activity in an interview. The Democrats have loved saying, we're not doing, no, we're just following the facts. We're just going where the facts take us. They're not going to want to go there anymore. They haven't been doing that anyway. The facts are beginning to roll in. And it turns out that Trump and Devin Nunes are not the story. They are victims of abuse of power, the Obama administration, and Democrat collusion with the media. Here first, the Eli Lake story. Top Obama advisor sought names of Trump associates in Intel. Eli Lake is a Intel/foreign policy expert/reporter/journalist. He's a columnist for Bloomberg View. He was the senior national security correspondent for the Daily Beast, which is a deranged, lunatic left-wing site started by Tina Brown. He covered national security and intelligence for the Washington Times, the New York Sun, and UPI. I don't know how he ended up briefly at the Daily Beast, but he was. His story begins thus. White House lawyers last month discovered that the former White House lawyers. This is the Office of Presidential Counsel. This is the office of Don McGahn, essentially. That's the counsel's office. That's official counselor to the president. White House lawyers last month discovered that former National Security Advisor Susan Rice requested the identities of U.S. persons in raw intelligence reports on dozens of occasions that connect to the Trump transition and campaign, according to U.S. officials familiar with the matter. She requested their identities. She, in other words, demanded that they be unmasked so she could find out who they were. You put this together with Evelyn Farkas, who appeared on MSNBC on March the 2nd, pretty much admitting all of this, that they were gathering the evidence, they were preserving the evidence. They didn't trust the Trump administration not to throw it all away, so they decided to leak it. The pattern of Susan Rice's request was discovered in a National Security Council review of the government's policy on unmasking the identities of individuals in the U.S. who are not targets of electronic eavesdropping, but whose communications are collected incidentally. The New York Times has also reported this back in January. They've used the word wiretaps. They've used the word incidentally. To review briefly, here's what happens. An intelligence agency, take your pick, CIA, NSA, DIA, you name it, surveils foreign actors, nations, individuals, spies. In this case, in this example, the Russian ambassador is surveilled. His phone calls are tapped. The Russian ambassador knows it. This is standard operating procedure. They surveil us in Moscow, or try. It's statecraft. It's what happens. Nothing illegal about that. That's what Devin Nunes meant when he said that what he had seen at the old executive office building, there was nothing illegal about it. Because the surveillance was not targeting Americans. It was targeting Russians. So you're surveilling the Russian ambassador, you're tapping his phone, and in the process, you overhear conversations that he's having with, say, Michael Flynn of the Trump transition team. When that happens, those transcribing this call are supposed to not identify the American involved, instead referring to him as American number one. If there's another American in the same call, that would be called American number two, and so on. The name is not revealed, nor are the details of what the American says, because the American isn't the target. That's where the Obama administration steps in. Susan Rice asked for the American in these calls to be unmasked so that she and Obama and Valerie Jarrett and probably the whole kit and caboodle would know who was saying what was said on these calls. The interesting thing is, a backtrack, since they've had, and there's a tape of this call between the Russian ambassador and Flynn, if Flynn had indeed promised anything about lifting sanctions once Obama was inaugurated, they would have reported that by now. It is clear that Flynn did not do anything actionable, because all they've been able to do is leak supposition and create mystery about it. But they've known all along that nothing happened. They've known all along that Flynn didn't do anything illegal in his conversation with the Russian ambassador. So the leaks have been intended to create suspicion rather than allay it. Let me take a break. We will continue with this. I'll go through it as quickly as I can right after this. Okay, quickly back to the Eli Lake piece. The pattern of the requests made by Susan Rice of the Obama administration to unmask all of these Americans in this treasure trove of wiretapped intelligence and retrieved intelligence was discovered in a National Security Council review of the government's policy on unmasking the identities of individuals in the U.S. who are not targets of electronic eavesdropping, but whose communications are collected incidentally. Last week, there were a number of Republicans who were going against the grain, saying the NSA had a bombshell coming. Do you remember that? And there were people who were distrustful of it, because the NSA and the FBI and the CIA are all perceived to be part of the Obama deep state, where a number of Obama embeds and holdovers remain, attempting to sabotage both the Trump transition and the Trump presidency. But it turns out that the NSA did indeed have a bombshell. Somebody there, whistleblower, somebody revealed that it was Susan Rice who was requesting that all of these Americans incidentally caught up in foreign surveillance be unmasked. And it has to be agents of the Obama administration, which we know instinctively, who were leaking all of this to the media. But it gets even better. We are in the middle of a blockbuster piece of news that the mainstream media still sits on. They still have not reported this. Now, I want to go back to the Eli Lake piece. This one allusion here that the pattern of Susan Rice requests that Americans incidentally caught in intelligence and surveillance of others be unmasked and identified. Again, discovered in a National Security Council review of the government's policy on unmasking the identities of individuals in the U.S. who are not targets. She was instrumental in this. And we know National Security Council probably by way of the NSA, but regardless. Now, the news about Rice also sheds light on the behavior of Devin Nunes in the last 2 weeks. Now, remember how his behavior has been characterized by the media. Treasonous, unfair, cheating, that Devin Nunes secretly, under the cover of darkness, snuck into the White House grounds to take a look at intelligence that only he saw, and he didn't share it with his counterpart, Adam Schiff, on the Intelligence Committee, and this is unseemly, and he should recuse himself, and he should resign from the committee, and he maybe should even leave his office as a member of the House of Representatives. Now, it emerged last week that Nunes went to the White House last month, the night before he made an allegation about Trump transition officials caught up in incidental surveillance. At the time, he said he needed to go to the White House because the reports were only on a database for the executive branch. Covered this last week. National Security Council is in the executive office building on the 4th floor, and nothing leaves there because it's securely maintained there. You want to see it? You go there. Nunes went there. It now appears that Nunes needed to view computer systems within the National Security Council that would include the logs of Rice's requests to unmask Americans. That's what he saw. That is what led to him alluding to the fact that the president was correct that he had been surveilled. Remember, unmasking, in this case, identifying Americans incidentally caught up in the surveillance of others, effectively means Americans are being surveilled. And in fact, I'll go so far, I'm going to repeat an allegation. Well, not quite an allegation. I want to repeat a possibility that I mentioned. And it is this, that the Obama administration chose surveillance targets knowing that they would be talking to specific Americans, wanting to see what those specific Americans were talking about. And so while they couldn't get a FISA warrant to target Americans, they purposely targeted for surveillance foreign actors that they knew Trump transition people would be talking to, and learned what they were saying that way. And that's why Rice was requesting that these people be unmasked so that she and Obama and whoever else in this operation would understand who was being talked about and who was saying what. Now, this brings us back to pencil neck. Adam Schiff, the ranking Democrat on the committee that Nunes chairs, just had a gasket blown. He went nuts, claiming that the Democrats in the committee were being left out, that we shouldn't trust what Nunes was saying. He might be making it up, that this was unseemly. It should not be tolerated. So he went up there. He viewed these reports on Friday. And in comments to the press over the weekend, he declined to discuss them, but he said no evidence. After last week earlier claiming to have proof now that there was collusion between the Russians and Trump, pencil neck went on the Sunday shows and had to totally back out of that. And he's reduced to once again saying, we don't have evidence of anything. That's why we need to keep looking. There isn't evidence of anything that has been charged. The scandal here is not Trump. The scandal is not Trump and the Russians. The scandal is the Obama administration and these embeds in the deep state surveilling targets with the express purpose of hoping to capture Americans as part of the surveillance. And as Eli Lake says, much of this is highly unusual, if not how the surveillance was collected, and certainly how and why it was disseminated. So Nunes is looking to be the exact opposite of the way the media portrayed him. Nunes was actually trying to get to the bottom of this and found out how deep the bottom is. Now let's go to Schiff. From State of the Union on CNN Sunday morning, Jake Tapper. Congressman Pencilneck, the big issue is whether or not there was collusion among members of the Trump campaign or Trump advisors. Can you definitely say that there was collusion, that there were people affiliated with the Trump campaign who were working with the Russians to time the release of damaging information about Hillary Clinton that had been hacked either from John Podesta or the DNC. That's the entire Democrat case right there. That is it summed up. That is what they want everybody to believe. That's what this lunatic, Tom Perez, the new chairman of DNC, at a rally in Newark over the weekend. Trump didn't win the presidency. Trump didn't. The Republicans don't give an excrement about people. The guy went off the rails. He made this militant Islamist Keith Ellison look mild-mannered by nature. Ellison was second in the voting for chairman of the DNC. This Perez guy is just an uber partisan, was just off the rails. And this is it, because they believe, and you know what, folks? But they know all of this is made up. Although they are so off the rails, I think they've bought their own lie and series of lies for so long now that they actually probably believe it happened. There isn't any evidence whatsoever. There has never been any evidence that votes were tampered with. Nobody's even alleged that. There was never any evidence whatsoever. And look at what the Democrats are admitting. If their version of events actually happened, that the Russians were able to plant fake news, and that the Russians hacked Podesta, and that the Russians got the WikiLeaks, and WikiLeaks released all the emails. Look at what they're asking us to believe, that the Russians were able to outsmart the American voter, that the Russians were able to screw with the minds of the American voter and make them vote against Democrats. The Democrats are portraying themselves as weak, ineffective, and incompetent as they attempt to make the case that Russian collusion with Trump stole the election from them. So here is Schiff answering that question from Jake Tapper. You have any evidence, any collusion, Trump campaign, Trump advisors, and Russia? Can you definitively say there was collusion? Can you say that this resulted in Hillary losing the election?
I don't think we can say anything definitively at this point. We are still at the very early stage of the investigation. The only thing I can say is that it would be irresponsible for us not to get to the bottom of this. We really need to find out exactly what the Russians did, because one of the most important conclusions that the intelligence community reached is that they are going to do this again to the United States. They're doing it already in Europe. So we can say, conclusively, this is something that needs to be thoroughly investigated, but it's way premature to be reaching conclusions.
Really? He had just reached a conclusion a few days earlier when he went out and said that there was evidence of collusion. He had to pull it back because there isn't any. This is going to blow up on him. The media is going to cover for him when it happens. I understand, but it's going to blow up on him. This is going to be... Gorsuch is going to blow up on him, too. The AP has a story out today. Boy, did this one have to be tough to write. The AP has a story out today about all the achievements Trump has racked up, all the things he's accomplishing here that are substantive and meaningful, and all of them are the unraveling of things Obama did. It is a long story, takes 3 pages to print out, and you can just tell that there is anger seeping out of this story. Because while all of this is going on, while they try to prove Trump's illegitimate, Trump is unraveling as much of Obama as he can and is succeeding wildly and isn't finished by any stretch of the imagination. Having more fun than a human being should be allowed to have. Great to have you here, El Rushbo, at the Limbaugh Institute for Advanced Anti-Leftist Studies. And we start on the phone today in Oxford, Ohio. This is Bill. Bill, great to have you. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing outstanding, Rush. How about yourself?
Fine and dandy. Fine and dandy. Great to have you here.
I'll get a quick question real quick, like Mr. Surley said. My question is, why is everybody so scared of the filibuster? Why don't they just let the Democrats get on the floor and talk and talk and talk?
That's not what a filibuster is. That's not the kind of filibuster we're talking about.
It's not.
No. A filibuster is a rule in the Senate that essentially says anything has to get 60 votes before it can proceed to the Senate for a debate, either a piece of legislation or Supreme Court nominee. Now, Harry Reid triggered the nuclear option on lower court nominees and appellate court nominees to get rid of the filibuster. So now for those nominees, those judges, it only takes 51 votes. The kind of filibuster you're talking about would say the Democrats would eventually weary out, they'd have to take a potty break and give it up, and then the Republicans would eventually get the floor back. That's not what we're talking about here.
Okay, so I had just a misunderstanding of it then.
Not, you know what? But I'm glad you called, because a lot of people do. This is another one of these I had the same exact reaction you did when I first started studying or learning about this, and I heard the filibuster used, but I never saw anybody on the floor of the Senate talking. So what the hell is this filibuster? And it was explained to me they allow they allow for somebody to pretend to be occupying the floor. And instead of that, they substitute a requirement that it was done to protect minorities from overreach by the majority. And it's a Senate, it's not in the Constitution. It is a Senate rule that was established some years ago. And very simply, it just says that, be it a piece of legislation or in this case a Supreme Court nominee, there must be 60 votes to stop debate. The debate is what you think the filibuster is. When you hear this, you think, oh, there's countless people on the floor of the Senate just talking and reading and saying nothing, just wasting time. They suspend with that. They just assume that would happen. They don't put that requirement, and instead 60 votes are needed. Pure and simple. The nuclear option is eliminating that 60-vote requirement and returning it to a simple majority, which is 51. Harry Reid did that so that Obama could pack the lower courts. Obama's appellate nominees and district court nominees only needed 51 votes. Harry Reid did that so that the Republicans, who were in the minority, could not stop. The Democrats, no party has had 60 votes in the Senate in a long time. That's one of the reasons the number was arrived at. So Harry Reid, you know what? I'm not even going to let the filibuster play out here. He changed the rules. That's what all of this hand-wringing is about now. Should the Republicans do what Harry Reid did and change it to include Supreme Court nominees? And, of course, the purists are saying, we can't do that. That would be tearing up the rules of the Senate. That would be eliminating centuries, years of tradition. No, it wouldn't. When Harry Reid changed the rules, nobody was wringing their hands. Nobody in the left, nobody in the media thought, oh, my God, what's the Senate doing? Nobody thought that. They praised Harry Reid for a brilliant political maneuver. Now that Mitch McConnell might do it, now everybody, you can't do that. You can't destroy the Senate that way. That would destroy the Senate. It's already been destroyed, if that's what defining destroying the Senate is. Now, as to your other question, let me tell you why the timing here may matter. The second and third week of April is when the Supreme Court announces cases that they are going to take for the next session, which will start after the summer recess. The court comes back around late September, early October. They start ostensibly with the fiscal year of the federal government's budget. So they are going to be announcing in the next 3 weeks the cases they're going to be taking. That would mean that if McConnell is right and he's going to have Gorsuch confirmed by Friday, that means Gorsuch will have sway on those decisions. I think the truth of the matter is, and your call kind of illustrates it, I don't think the majority of Americans care how Gorsuch gets through the Senate. If they need to nuke, nuke. If they have to trigger the nuke, do it. But Rush, the Democrats will get away with it because of the media, but they'll skewer McConnell. Look, The day has to come, doesn't it? I look heavenward, I pray. Can the Republicans just one day do something not out of fear? But McConnell has pretty much committed himself to this if he has to. He's going to do what it takes. Here's the thing about this, though, Bill. Once the rules changed, it's changed. They don't just change it for a nominee. That's why the Democrats doing this is very odd, because the odds are that Gorsuch is going to be committed anyway, or confirmed anyway. So why go through this when he's not really objectionable? The only reason he's being so objected is because the Democrat donors, the lunatics in their base, are telling these guys if they don't stop this Gorsuch guy, they can forget about getting any donor money. I heard Dianne Feinstein today. You know, the Senate Judiciary Committee is going to vote this week, and they all get to make a statement. And Di-Fi, the chairman of the Democrats, a ranking member, was reading her she was reading it. She didn't even know in her heart why she opposes the guy. It was embarrassing to listen to her go through this. It was clear that somebody had written it for her, and she was not doing a very good job of reading it. Anyway, I'm out of time here. There's your answer. This is not the kind of filibuster where you remember Rand Paul and Ted Cruz talking for days on the Senate floor. That's not what we're talking about. How many of you in the audience think that the Democrats actually believe they can force Trump out of office and that that's why they are doing this? Think about that. I'm going to address that as we dig even deeper into this unmasking story, this blockbuster. Hang on, be right back. You know, I have a buddy, I have a very good friend that some of you probably would know the name. The guy was an ardent Trump supporter, just loved Trump. I just thought it was generic. Thought he liked Trump just for generic reasons. It turns out he was really for Trump for two specific reasons. And the top reason was tax cuts. And this guy is livid. This guy is livid. He sends me emails almost daily about feeling betrayed and angry every time he sees a story. And there's just a new one out, AP. Congress not seen taking up tax cuts anytime soon. Guy gets livid, blows a gasket, sends me the note, wants me to dump all over him. And whenever Drudge highlights how much tax revenue has been created by property taxes or income taxes or sales tax, which Drudge has been reporting those numbers, this guy, see, they're raking in money. He goes nuts. So I finally wrote him back. I said, by the way, greetings and welcome back. El Rushbo here and our big think tank, the Center for Anti-Leftist Studies here at the EIB Network. So I wrote him back. I said, do you remember all of these debates we've had over the last 2.5 decades about tax reform? Yeah. Remember the flat tax? Yeah. Remember the fair tax? Yeah. You remember all these different reforms and these various new brackets resulting from tax cuts? Yeah. So why do you think it hasn't ever happened? Because we've never elected anybody who really wanted to do it, but now we have. I said, yeah, and where is it? So I wrote him back. I said, I got to remind you of something, because I have taken big hits on this program for not getting behind all these various reforms. I mean, there have been various members of Congress, pushing the fair tax. And when I didn't take it up as a giant champion of the cause, I would hear from some of the organizers, why aren't you helping us out on this? And I said, because I can't do everything. But the real reason, folks, look, spending money is the job. That's what you get to do when you are elected to federal office. In the House, in the Senate, White House, you get to spend the money. And it is your job to spend the money. I can't tell you the number of senators I've spoken to who described their job to me. I've had 3 of them describe their job to me this way. I'm in charge of 1/100th of the federal budget, Rush. I said, what do you mean? Well, there's only 100 of us, and the vote comes up. I mean, I'm one of 100 people in the Senate that gets to determine how much is going to get spent and where. The tax code, here's the real answer to all this. The tax code is the single biggest source of power that elected officials have. They use it for social architecture. They use it to stoke certain areas of our economy and penalize others. Oh, I need to correct this. You should have been shouting it. He snurdily sends me a little note here on an obscure, I've got 8 monitors in front of me, and snurdily puts the note here on an obscure little 10-incher. Susan Collins, somebody in the audience called Susan Collins' office, Senator Susan Collins, and berated whoever answered the phone because Collins was going to vote against Gorsuch. And a listener called here and said that the Collins office said no, that Senator Collins is voting for Gorsuch. So I stand corrected. But I'm telling you, I saw this in an interview on Fox today. I don't remember who said it. It might have been a Fox anchor. It might have been a Fox info babe. Or it might have been a guest. But I saw somebody say it. And the reason I believed it is because I would believe it. And if I heard it about Lisa Murkowski, I would believe it. I'm glad to be wrong in this case. I know there are 3 Democrats that are going to vote for Gorsuch. But I discounted that because I'd heard that Collins was going to cross over and vote against him on the truck driver case. Snurdly's back. Are you saying we're not going to get tax cuts? I'm telling you that Trump may have meant it when he campaigned on them. And the Republicans may have meant it when they campaigned on it. But do you see it? What do you see? Every time tax cuts are in the news, you see the news is what? Well, I don't know if we're going to be able to get through it this year. Well, if we do get to it, we might be able to take it up by August, just in time for the first of 3 big recesses. My friend doesn't think we're going to. My friend has figured out we're not going to get tax cuts. He thinks, and he's livid. He's livid. He believes that tax cuts in his bracket is going to be the fastest way to more disposable income for him. He doesn't think that he can go out and get a new job or new career that's going to pay him demonstrably more than he's making. And tax cuts, the ones, I mean, you take the rate from 39 to 36 or 39 to 33, that can add up that can add up to a lot of money. It could be a nice chunk of change. It could equal a pretty good raise or more so. And this guy has been totally planning for it. Nice. Well, they were going to reduce the corporate tax to get that down from whatever it is and try to repatriate some American money held overseas. They were going to try to do something on the capital gains tax. And Trump was even talking about eliminating carried interest, which is the tax that the hedge fund guys love because it allows them to declare earned income as capital gains for the 15% rate instead of 39%. Trump's talked about getting rid of that. But the point is, there isn't any action on it. Now, I don't mean to be cynical here, but I'm just telling you, that's a tremendous power that I have never believed members of Congress are going to willingly sign off on. Now, that is more applicable to the idea of tax reform. I mean, I love this idea of a single rate, flat tax, fair tax. That's what I never see happening, folks. Not unless there's term limits and you end up with people that are going to be brand new in office. It's too much power. Look at just the home mortgage deduction alone. Look at the power just in that instance. In fact, there is a story. It's interesting that I mentioned that. There's a story in the Stack today about how home ownership is plunging. Largely, it's because millennials don't want to buy houses, supposedly, just like millennials didn't want to buy cars until now they do. This is all going to change as millennials. Remember, millennials don't think they're adults until they're 30 now. When they're 25, they're still in daycare. 28, they're still in daycare. They're going to eventually buy homes, but right now they're renting because there's more flexibility and mobility, and they don't have the down payment and student loan debt and all that. So there's panic on because people aren't buying homes at a replacement level rate. So the home building business and the real estate business is under pressure. And the home mortgage deduction, the interest deduction, where do you think that originated? I mean, I don't talking about when, but it originated because the home industry, real estate or builders' lobbies were sufficiently powerful enough to convince Congress to allow a tax deduction for interest on mortgage. And do you realize how much that was used to sell houses? The mortgage interest deduction, and really they weren't selling houses, they were selling monthly payments. And the monthly payment was made even more affordable by deducting the interest. And there have been talks over the years about removing it, and people caterwauled, just like people had a fit when they did remove in 86 the interest on your credit card bill. That used to be deductible too. When that was taken away as part of the 86 tax reform, I was there, folks. For 2 weeks, we had nothing but rage on the phones on this program. And I try to tell people, do you realize you're going to be better off with it? You're out spending money to get a deduction. But people love the idea of deductions. You know why? Because they think that's what the rich people do. Rich people get rich by not paying taxes, and one of the ways they don't pay taxes, they get to deduct everything. So if you get to deduct a little bit of your credit card interest, yeah, man, I'm screwing somebody. Same thing with the home mortgage interest. It'll never be taken away as long as the realtor lobby and the home builder lobby remains powerful. And as long as owning a home is part of the definition of the American dream, the mortgage interest deduction will survive. But no, Mr. Snerdley, I'm not saying it's never going to happen. I'm just saying tax reform, this flat tax, fair tax, single rate, that I won't believe will happen in my lifetime. I don't think it's ever going to happen. Those guys are never going to get, because every one of those plans ends deductions. In exchange for the rate, there aren't any deductions. Well, here came the charities. You can't do that. Why? People donate to charities in part for the deduction, and if you're going to take that away, our charity's going to survive. It's going to be horrible. And the fair and flat tax people's fine. Well, a lot of people are going to be in the same boat. You got to make it up on your own. The deduction is not that big anyway. It's too much power. It's the single greatest power members of Congress and the Senate have. I've brought it up many, many years because it is the social architecture alone. The power to buy votes, the power to shape the culture the way you want it. I mean, look at Obama taxing medical devices. What do you think that was really all about? Well, it was to kill the medical device industry, but then there was a... Remember how you've forgotten this. Remember how certain sexual aids got tossed into that category? Yeah. Now, what's your question? You said you had a question. Since I brought this up. What do you mean, since I brought this up? What's the question? Right? Trump's... Right? Yep, Trump's talking about rebuilding the military, more billions and billions, and infrastructure spending, more billions and billions. And you're wondering, how does tax cuts figure without all that? Well, again, I still believe that Trump's infrastructure plan is going to feature funding mechanisms that, while not unique, are funding mechanisms that we haven't seen in a while. I think this business of using public money with private money is a real idea, and I think Trump can bring it off. I think there are certain people that would be happy to participate in the rebuilding of an airport if there's equity in it, rebuilding a bridge if there are names on it, rebuilding a highway if they get to erect a rest area with a casino in it. Who knows? I think I haven't heard of that. I'm just suggesting here that the opportunity for private money participation in this is not something I consider to be out of the realm of possibility. But on the business of tax cuts, I just wanted to mention this because my friend is beside himself. He literally thought that was going to be the first thing Trump did. And I don't know where Trump is. Trump may indeed want it. I'm just telling you, it's going to be the most difficult thing because it's the last thing they really want to do. And they can always say, we can't afford to do tax cuts. Look at the deficit, Rush. And look at the national debt, Rush. Why, they just keep exploding out there. We can't be seriously talking about, remember, if we cut tax over here, we got to figure out where to pick it up over there. We got to. So they never do with any less in government. So if they give you a tax cut, they've got to find the money they're giving back to you from somewhere else in the form of a tax increase or some other fee or what have you. Look it. It's just common sense. Tax cuts are a tough thing because that's a direct giveaway of an incredible amount of power that elected members of the federal government have. Let me take a break. I did not mean to spend this much time on this, but as usual, when I get going on things, all avenues are explored. And so that's that. But that's the answer on tax cuts. I'm trying to help my friend through this, but I don't think anything will help him. I mean, he's literally ready to abandon Trump over this. Ticked off as he can be, despite my supremely logical explanation. It doesn't help. In fact, I'm making him feel worse. Well, the way you're talking, it's never going to happen. I'm not saying never going to happen. Tax reform, flat tax fair, yeah, maybe not in our lifetimes. Tax cuts, I do believe they're going to happen. I just don't think they're the priority, and they haven't been in a while. Welcome back. Great to have you, Rush Limbaugh, serving humanity, executing assigned host duties flawlessly. One thing on the tax cuts, and I think you have to keep something in mind. Remember who's reporting this. It's the drive-by media, and I think it's all part of the agenda. Anytime the drive-bys are reporting there's not going to be this element of the Trump agenda anytime soon or that element, you need to be very suspicious. You need to dial it back before you believe it and accept it. Look at what Trump's been doing. Trump has been meeting with business leaders seemingly every week for the last 70 days. They have all asked him. They have all told him they need tax cuts and regulations eliminated. And Trump comes out of these meetings and says so, that he's going to do this. And these people in the meetings come out and say the best meetings they've ever been in of this kind. And then Trump administration officials have said that they hope to have this done or at least be started by August. And yet every week there's a drive-by media story that says no tax cuts anytime soon. And it's from the usual nameless sources speaking on the case of anonymity here because they're not permitted to speak about these things. So if I wouldn't give up yet. Trump's achievements, particularly in unraveling a lot of Obama administration initiatives, is profound. I'll get to that in a minute here. Let me get back to the phones here. Cynthia in St. Louis. Great to have you. I'm glad you waited. How are you?
Thank you, Rush. I'm fine. And what I'm calling about is these are not Republican talking points. I am a Southern Illinois conservative Democrat who voted for Trump. Haven't voted for a Democrat since '92. I know how this works. My dad was tapped to be a congressman. He was a political operative. I've seen how the sausage is made. I know how dirty, rotten liberals are who've taken over our party for the last 30, 40 years. I know what criminals they are. I know the tricks that they play, and it's absolutely hilarious to watch the chutzpah when they can't believe somebody's using one of their dirty tricks on them, a.k.a. the nuclear solution. But what I'm hoping, and so far I see it, is that Trump is the man that I voted for, that a lot of people like me voted for, somebody who will fight back. And I hope that he's willing to go all the way to the mat, including, and do you think we will ever see any indictments at the top of the Obama administration, all the way to the Justice Department and the State Department and the FBI? And I hope to God he's grooming David Clark to take James Comey's place. Who's got something somebody's got something dirty on Comey. He can't decide what side he's on. He's in a panic. So something's going on there. God bless you, Rush. Could you tell me if you think we'll ever get to see Obama and Hillary and, Eric, what was his name?
Eric.
The Attorney General.
Holder, I think you mean.
Holder and Lynch. Do you ever think we'll see them in the new orange?
If I had to answer your question right now, I would say no. I can't see these indictments. I can't see these convictions. I wouldn't base my happiness or my definition of Trump's success on that. But Trump is fighting back. It goes to a question I asked right before the previous hour ended. Do the Democrats, do you think, all of you, do you think the Democrats really believe they can force Trump out of office, either by way of impeachment or just ticking him off so much he quits? Welcome back, my friends. El Rushbo, meeting and surpassing all audience expectations every day. And nobody else that does that. And it happens here each and every day. You can count on it. Grab audio soundbite number 25. Brian Kilmeade speaking with Shannon Bream on Fox News this morning.
Are we sure that every Republican will vote for the nuclear option? I hear Senator Collins might not do this.
That's the tricky thing, because in order to change Senate precedent, you're not changing rules. You'd have to have all the Republicans on board for this.
All right, so I hear Susan Collins might not vote for the nuclear option. Now, this is not what I heard. This was Fox and Friends, and this was said before I got here and turned on the TV. I heard something later on Fox that Susan Collins wasn't going to vote for Gorsuch. Now, maybe I'm confused. Maybe they were just reporting that they had heard Susan Collins might not vote for the nuclear option. And by the way, that is going to require a lot of Republican participation for that to happen. McConnell, however, seems convinced that he can do it. I got a couple emails. Rush, you keep talking about these wacko donors that are making the Democrats do this stupid stuff. Do you really? Yes, I do believe it. I have no doubt. Folks, can I take you back to the recount? Jill Stein and her recount of certain states, Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. She was the Green Party candidate, and she was the first to try to actually prove that there was chicanery with the votes. Do you remember how that started? It started out as a fundraiser, and every time she spoke about it, she then increased the amount of money she said she would need to pull it off. And these liberals kept sending her money to the point that it became obscene. I wish I could remember the total amount of money, but it was crazy. It was millions and millions of dollars that people were sending her. And then when she actually got in and started doing her count, and none of this would have affected her, by the way, the Green Party candidate, it wouldn't have been anything she could have found that would have changed her fortunes. But what she uncovered was that if there was any chicanery, it was versus Trump. Trump ended up with more votes in her recount, not Clinton. Clinton ended up losing votes. Trump gained votes. Then, do you remember the effort to convince the Electoral College to not vote for Trump? Do you remember all the money raised for that? That also boggled people's minds. It's those people who are threatening the Democrats that they're never going to see another dime if they don't stop Gorsuch or if they don't do everything they can to try. Because the whole point of this is resistance, resistance, resistance. Stop Trump. Now, my question about what are the Democrats actually trying to do here? It's a serious question. You might think it's rhetorical, but it isn't. Are the Democrats doing all this because they really believe that this never-ending pressure, this never-ending assault, like many Americans have never seen, a lot of Americans are not old enough to remember Watergate and how Nixon was hounded. So this is a first for a significant number of young Americans. Do the Democrats literally believe that this strategy can force Trump out of office? Now, before you answer, if it's impeachment, the Republicans run the House and the Republicans run the Senate. So articles of impeachment would have to be presented in the House by Republicans. Well, they would have to be voted on by Republicans in the House. And if that strangely happened, the trial would take place in the Senate. Both places the Republicans own. So, Mike, do you see Republicans, if this doesn't change, if this pressure, if this ongoing effort to, call it what you will, discredit, destroy, impugn Trump, can you see the day where the Republicans want to get rid of him too, just to end all of this? What if Trump's approval numbers fall below 30%? You think the Republicans would start worrying about 2018? The Investors Business Daily poll is out, and Trump's at 36%, and that poll is widely accepted as accurate and nonpartisan. That poll accurately predicted Trump's win, and it accurately called 2012 as well. The Investors Business Daily poll's been right on the money. They've got Trump at 36%. At what point do members of his own party start sweating and think, this guy could take us down with him? I'm not predicting any of that, but the question, what is the Democrats' objective? Do you think that what they're doing is more than just trying to make sure the fundraising continues? Do you think, when you look at Feinstein, you look at Schumer, when you look at Pelosi, when you look at any of them, Pencilneck, Adam Schiff, when you look at any of them, Bernie Sanders, do you think that what they're really trying to do is force Trump out of office, either by frustrating him to the point that he quits or having his party go up and say, you're killing us, man. You're taking the whole party down and forcing him, asking him to resign. The impeachment route, that ain't going to happen. Okay, so if you think that none of that's going to happen, at what point do the Democrats realize that? And then what do they do? In other words, if they're doing all of this seriously to try to get rid of Trump, the day is going to come where they're going to realize it isn't going to work. What do they do then? That day has to come. It may not be next week or next month, but at some point in the future, even they are not going to be able to keep up this emotional fervor and pace. And it all goes back to motivation, too. Why is the media doing what they're doing? Well, there are many answers for it. Look, I don't mean to be insulting anybody here. Clearly the media hates Trump, yeah. And clearly the media is a bunch of leftists and they don't like Trump's policies, and clearly this and clearly that. But there's another factor to this, too, that I don't think can be denied. And I think they're scared to death. Trump is unraveling, bit by bit, major elements of the Obama agenda. The Democrats have to know in their hearts, I think this is one of the reasons that they're constantly enraged, they have to know that their policies do not work. They do not deliver as promised. They do not create jobs. They do not make people wealthier. They do not grow economies. They do not make sure everybody has health care. Everything they promise, none of it actually happens. And the more of what they implement happens, the worse it gets for everybody. There's a reason they're losing elections. And the reason they're losing elections is substantive, because people don't want any more of what the Democrats are doing. They are losing elections. They know it. Trump, look, this is all leading somewhere. I think a lot of the energy that the media and the Democrats are bringing to this is rooted in a belief that they can get rid of it. I really think that that's something they think they can do. Because they, in their minds, they've done it before. They got rid of Nixon, and they rendered Bush irrelevant. They think they can do it. The thing that they don't understand is Trump is not Nixon, and he is not George W. Bush. And he is not a traditional politician affected by these kinds of assaults the way most politicians are. I'm not saying it doesn't bother him. I'm not saying that he's immune to it. I'm not saying that he doesn't feel it. But I don't think he's the kind of guy that's going to cave to it, and I don't think he's going to sue for peace. I think just the opposite. I think he's going to continue to unravel as much of the Obama agenda as he can, and I think he's going to continue to wipe the floor with Democrats wherever he can. Whether it gets reported as that's what's happening or not, he's going to continue to do it. And I think the actual thing that's driving the media in this frenzy and the Democrats is the fact they lost the election. They're losing election. Trump did win this. It's not illegitimate. And when the day comes that they realize and sober up that he's not going to be hounded out of office, that he's not going to wake up one day and say to Pence, here, take the keys, I've had it. Then what are they going to do? Because they're shooting every barrel they've got now. And they will probably continue. My guess is they're going to try to continue this because even when it dawns on them that it isn't going to get rid of Trump, they will fall back on the belief, well, at least we can hurt him and slow down his agenda. At least we can make people hate him. At least we can keep his approval numbers low and whatever. But I don't think Trump approval numbers, sure, he'd like them to be higher, sure this, but I don't think that Trump's going to look at his approval numbers and say, wow, the American people don't want what I want to do. I better change. I don't think he's going to change his agenda. To have put up with all of this to date already says a mouthful. It already explains a lot. To have put up with this, to have not lost his cool. And by the way, on all of these tweets and all these allegations, he ends up being right. He's right about Sweden. I've got a story in the stack about how rot gut it is in Sweden. He was right about that. He's right that they were surveilling him. He's right about it. And he knows he's right. And he's frustrating the hell out of it. Now, folks, I know to you, some of you, it doesn't look like they're frustrated. They look like they're the ones that have the glow of victory. They look like they're the ones that are stymieing Trump and winning each and every day. They are not. I know perception is reality in politics, and I know how it looks. But the reality is they lost the election in what they thought it was going to be, a landslide with the best candidate they could have ever nominated, Hillary Clinton. Look at the rejection. The rejection is real. They're creating a fantasy island world in which none of this happened. And that's where they're choosing to live. That's not healthy, folks. Believe me. Okay, let me head back to the phones. This is Maureen in Fresno, California. Hi, Maureen.
Hello, Rush. Fedor te amo, a little French and Spanish lingo. I wanted to correct you for two things. And one thing I want to just jump up and down and hug you about, because I've been waiting for decades. The first thing is you pronounce Devin Nunes' name right. He's Portuguese. He does not have a tilde over his the N in his name, and it's like fingers on a blackboard before they had those white squeegee pens, and now it's the squeegee pens on the blackboard. But what I wanted to thank you for, Rush, I have watched Devin Nunes. I'm a constituent since he's been in short pants. He is an honorable man. He is, I always thought, would make a wonderful president because he has a spine and he has a brain. And one thing I haven't so much learned from you, but I have been reinforced by listening to you for 33 years. And the Republicans need a spine, and they need a rational brain.
Maureen, I'm having the toughest time understanding you. It's a bad connection or something, but our transcriber is unable to transcribe what you're saying to the point that I can understand. I'm sorry, it's just a bad phone line. The only thing I heard was the pronunciation of Devin Nunes' name. I'm sorry, Maureen. Maybe try back on a different line. Look, while I have a chance here is I've alluded to this a couple of times. This is a story from the Associated Press. Darlene Superville is the info babe. And this just had to destroy them writing this. Headline, bit by bit, Trump methodically undoing Obama policies. Now, I'll tell you what this is. This story inadvertently reveals what the real problem with Trump is. And it's not that he tweets, and it's not that he's a racist, and it's not that he's a liar, and it's not that he's a misogynist. It's that he is getting too much done. I know, I'm trying to anticipate you disagreeing with me, shouting at you, he doesn't look like he's winning anything, Rush, look at the media, he doesn't look like he's winning anything. That's my point. They know he is. He's getting too much done. Not that you would notice from the rest of the coverage that he's getting, but that's why he must be stopped. Bit by bit, Trump methodically undoing Obama policies. And here's a list. Climate change, internet privacy, abortion family planning, the Keystone Oil Pipeline, the Dakota Access Pipeline, fuel efficiency standards, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, abortion, personal finance. Trump has gotten rid of, in terms of climate change, he's gotten rid of the heart of the Obama administration. He has literally ripped the heart out of the Obama EPA. Remember now, climate change to the left contains everything they need to completely take over a country, a society, a population. And Trump has stripped it all out. I have to take a break. I'll build on this as the program unfolds. Don't go away. Remember last week I made mention of the fact that every bit of news about Trump is treated with, that doesn't look good. That looks bad. Oh, that doesn't sound good. I was more right than I knew. We have a montage demonstrating it upcoming. I got a healthcare question, Obamacare question. Are head explosions covered? Because I'm telling you, folks, this AP story, bit by bit, Trump methodically undoing Obama policies. This is why he's hated. This is why they are out of their minds. All this Trump's a racist, Trump's a pig, Trump's this, Trump's that. I'm sure they probably believe that, but that's not what's really fueling all of this. What's fueling this is Trump is doing what he said he was going to do. He's doing exactly what he said he was going to do. Have you heard? Trump's taking credit today for the health care bill failing. He said, look it, I told you I'm a winner, and that thing was going to lose. I told Ryan, pull a vote. We're not losing. I don't lose. I only win. So Trump's claiming credit for pulling the health care vote so that he wouldn't lose. Louis Gohmert, our good buddy, congressman from Texas, for all of the success that Trump is having, and he is having success in unraveling Obama's agenda. Louis says Trump's got 30 days here. These next 30 days are crucial for Trump. Don't do the wrong thing on health care. Louis' point is that if they get together with Ryan and try again on health care, if they do it the wrong way, Trump can undermine himself. Because Obamacare is that big a deal. It was that big a deal in the campaign. Getting rid of it, repealing it, replacing it, better actually do that or something very close to it. But quickly, let me run through this list again. I ran through it just to get the list in before time ran out. Climate change. Trump signed an executive order last week to deliver on his promise to unravel Obama's efforts to curb global warming. The order launched a review of the Clean Power Plan. Business groups had complained to Trump, himself a businessman, that the rules were intrusive and expensive. Now, the way that's written is designed to impugn Trump. Trump, a businessman himself. As though we can't have that. We get businessman in the Oval Office. We can't do that. It's a conflict. But I'm telling you, climate change is a signature Obama issue. It's a fundamental left-wing issue. Climate change, global warming, whatever you want to call it, contains every desire the Democrats have for co-opting and controlling an entire population or society that is aimed at keeping them in power forever. Climate change has everything. It gives them license and power to rule over every aspect of life. If the planet and its survival is hanging in the balance, then they can tell you and me what we can and cannot do on practically everything. Healthcare is number 2. If they gain full control, as in single payer, over the American healthcare system, that pretty much is ball game combined with climate change, because then they get to dictate how you live. And if you don't live according to the dictates, you may not be treated for a health malady that you suffer. So these are 2 big things. But then there was Trump expected to sign legislation erasing another Obama rule, one that barred states from withholding federal family planning funds from Planned Parenthood affiliates and other clinics that provide abortions. That rule was finalized shortly before Obama left office in January, and Trump's about to erase it. The 2 pipelines, Keystone XL, Dakota Access. Obama steadfastly refused to support either because his big money donors, primarily a guy named Tom Steyer, but there are many others, and Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett doesn't want these pipelines because right now Warren Buffett-owned trains carry the fuel. Fuel efficiency standards. Trump administration re-examining federal requirements governing the fuel efficiency of cars and trucks. 5 years ago, the regime set fuel economy regulations for model years 217 to 225 and agreed to complete a midterm evaluation by next year. Then days before Obama left office, the EPA decided to keep stringent requirements it had set in place for model years 2022 through 2025. The auto industry balked. Trump announced in Michigan he's putting the midterm review back on track, which is going to ease manufacturing. It's going to... All this would do would be to reduce the choice you have in the kind of vehicle you buy, because slowly but surely the pickup truck and SUVs would be illegal. Well, not totally, but the fleet would only be allowed to be comprised, say, 10, 20%. The rest of them, you have to buy these little dime store cars that nobody wants. All this is gone. Folks, these are the pie-in-the-sky wet dream things that the left has been dreaming of implementing for decades. And Obama did it, and Trump has stripped them out. Trans-Pacific Partnership, a trade deal that big deal was made of that during the campaign. On abortion, Trump reinstated a ban on providing federal money to international groups that perform abortions or provide information about them. Obama had lifted the ban when he took office in 2009. It's back. It's a huge list of accomplishments. And this does not include all of the things that Trump has done after having met with certain specific groups. These are just the things that Obama had implemented that Trump is unraveling. There are other aspects of the Trump agenda, like building the wall. That's going forward. ICE, deporting people, calling out sanctuary cities and moving in on them. There's all kinds of really serious, substantive, important things to the left that Trump is attacking, plans to attack, or has already dealt with. And the left can't stop him. And this is what is frustrating them to no end. They're firing both barrels 24/7. They haven't intimidated Trump. They haven't made Trump stop doing one thing that he said he was going to do. Trump's not even acting scared. If anything, Trump's mad and is fighting back with his tweets. And now this intel thing, blockbuster news that Susan Rice of the Obama administration wanted to know the names, was in charge of the unmasking of Trump administration and transition people. This is huge. This is going to blow up in their faces so big you can't believe when this Russia colluded with Trump to steal the election is going to blow up on these people. And I'll tell you what caused it to reverse on them. When Trump tweeted that Obama had tapped his wires, quote unquote, at Trump Tower, that is what reversed all of this. That is when the Democrats did a panic and got even stranger and weirder on this. And that's when they started denying that there was any investigation. Trump's insane. Trump is unstable. What do you mean? We haven't been surveilling Trump. And that put the lie to everything, because they have been surveilling Trump. And we know this because what they surveilled ended up in the New York Times and at CNN. Trump picked up the hand grenade and threw it right back at him. And essentially, Trump, in a generic sense, was right. They were surveilling him. Susan Rice is Obama. She wanted the names of Trump people unmasked so they could be leaked to the media in an effort to discredit Trump and his transition and ultimately his presidency. Trump wasn't supposed to do that. No, the way you're supposed to react to the media is weakness, fear, sue for peace, beg forgiveness, give them more access. Instead, he picked the grenade up and threw it right back at them. Don't doubt me on this. I don't care if it's not being reported this way. I don't care how it's being reported. The reality of what happens is the reality of what happens, and it's how everybody is having to live. What's happening in Washington is not an illusion. Trump is rolling back Obama-era achievements. What's happening in Washington is that Trump is moving his agenda forward with the people he wants surrounding him. They are unable to stop any of it, and so they're trying to do it in the court of public opinion by making it look like the man's office rocker is unqualified, is maybe corrupt, dangerous, a chronic liar, can't tell the truth about anything. They're firing both barrels 24/7, and it isn't stopping him. At some point, they're going to realize that it isn't going to work. Lawrence Tribe, who is a favored leftist, he's a law professor at Harvard, had some very sobering bad news for the left. He told them there is not a law that permits anybody to get rid of a president who you might think was elected with a rigged election. He told the left that there is not a law that would allow you to get rid of a president you don't like. He told the left that there is not a law that lets you redo an election that you think was stolen. Lawrence Tribe had to tell them this. Now, when he told them this, he let them know that he thinks Trump is scum to save his own skin at giving them this bad news. But this is why I'm asking, because when they realize there's nothing they can do short of impeachment, and that isn't going to happen, they could try to pass a law that says we can get rid of a president if we think he conspired with an enemy to get elected. But Trump would veto that law if it ever got to his desk. There's nothing they can do. Okay, let them. They'll be in the streets tearing things up. What they're doing is tearing themselves apart. You think what the Democrats are doing today is how you build a movement? Is this how you build a grow? Is this how you go out and attract people to your movement? We'll see. We'll see. I'm just telling you that the reason that they're reacting the way they're reacting is because they are panicked. I don't care how it looks every day, that they make it look like they're winning, that Trump's losing. In the real world, and remember, I'm the mayor there. In the real world, they are not succeeding. Now, last week, grab audio soundbite number 1. Last week, I made this observation. I just want to give voice to it. And it is the way the drive-by sets the table every day, no matter what. I call it the media hot take, which is the first reaction to any new bit of news. I'm going to present this in non-chronological order just to illustrate the point. But when somebody discovered or learned or what have you that Melania Trump hasn't moved into the White House, that doesn't look good. Mike Pence and his wife have rules about public appearances. That's not a normal look. That's not a good look. Trump has put a lot of highly successful business people in his cabinet. That doesn't look good. That looks bad. Trump talked to businesses about keeping jobs in the U.S. before he was sworn in. That looks bad. Trump didn't want to keep the Obama outdoor play set at the White House because there aren't any little kids running around. That certainly doesn't look good for the children. Ivanka Trump was photographed sitting at her father's desk in the Oval Office. That had to be wrong. Trump tweets before sunrise. That's not normal. Trump tweets that he believes he's been illegally surveilled. That doesn't look good. That's not right. We get it. Whatever the story is, they set the stage before they even get into the opinion of the story by characterizing it as that doesn't look good. Okay, so I did that basically off the top of my head with some improv. It's just something that struck me the night before, the day before. So the crack team at Cookieville decided to find evidence of this. And lo and behold, we have been able to put together another montage. We must have 5 or 6 of these montages. The first one was gravitas, Dick Cheney being chosen vice president for George W. Bush. We have lots of people in this montage, and this proves my observational skills and my point.
It just doesn't look good. There's no really other way to put it.
Well, it doesn't look good.
Certainly the process doesn't look good.
It doesn't look good.
It just looks bad.
It looks bad for the president. Very sloppy, very heavy-handed.
It sure doesn't look good today.
It looks bad. It looks very bad.
Again, it looks bad.
We don't know what they discussed, but this doesn't look good.
It is about the optics and the way things look. It looks bad.
Like you, I am troubled by this, and I think it looks bad.
Obviously, on the surface, it just doesn't look good.
It's the appearance of impropriety. It just doesn't look good.
It doesn't look good. At the end of the day, that's what we're faced with.
Doesn't mean the game's over, but it doesn't look good for the home team.
There you have it. Another montage uncovered by me and our observational skills. And by the way, our buddy Seton Motley runs a website, lessgovernment.org, is the first person to ever notice what we've done here. He has a website piece today in which he cites 3 or 4 of our montages as he does his own piece on media conformity. So I wanted to thank Mr. Motley for noticing and actually referencing it. So we'll link to that at rushlimbaugh.com in addition to you finding it on your own. Now a brief timeout. We'll come back and continue right after this. Sneaking in a phone call in here, folks. This is Tony in Berlin, Maryland. Hi, Tony, on the Rush Limbaugh program. Hi.
How you doing, Rush? Good to talk to you after 25 years of trying. Finally got through.
I'm glad you did, sir.
Got a lot saved up, but to go to the item of the moment, it's curious to me that if the Obama administration were surveilling Trump during the campaign, that they wouldn't be surveilling all the top candidates early on, too. So why isn't some Republican asking the intelligence community as to were they, in fact, surveilling other Republican candidates during the campaign?
I suspect that somebody may know that already.
Obviously, NSA knows it. They got him on tape.
Well, theoretically, what we know is that Susan Rice, the bombshell today, just to repeat, I haven't talked about this since the first half hour of the program. The bombshell today, maybe I should go through this again. The intelligence agency, NSA, we'll say, was surveilling the Russian ambassador and all kinds of other foreign actors, which is legal and normal. And in the process, any Americans they talk to on the phone or in person is going to be captured. When Americans are captured while foreign actors are being targeted, the American capture is called incidental. It's not targeted and therefore not usable. The Americans in such instances are never identified, other than American number 1, American number 2, however many in the conversation. The bombshell today, Susan Rice, who lied on 5 different Sunday shows about Benghazi as video being responsible for it, is the Obama official who asked that those Americans be identified, i.e. unmasked. And those names were then made public, and information in those phone calls that had been surveilled were leaked. And that's how we got the New York Times, Washington Post, CNN stories all through November, December, and January. And so what it means is that not only was Trump being surveilled, we know the surveillance was going on all through the summer. The surveillance was going on even before Trump was the nominee. So we know that Trump was being surveilled in a, not a direct way. This is the trick. The trick is, if you're Obama and you want to find out what Trump's saying, doing, or whatever, or anybody, you target people they're talking to. Trump wins, his transition team has to talk to the Russians and every other nation that we do business with. So you target those people. And then you surveil and you find out what Trump people are talking to which target and what they're saying. Now, process, were they surveilling and did they pick up calls the Russian ambassador might have had with Trump, with Cruz or what have you? Haven't heard any of that, but reason would tell us that they hoovered up quite a lot. Yeah, standby audio sound bites, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'll tell you, Fox News was early on in this news about an Obama administration official being responsible for the unmasking of Americans incidentally surveilled, such as Mike Flynn and others. And he started tweeting things out on March 31st. For example, our sources say the surveillance that led to the unmasking of private names of American citizens started before Trump was the GOP nominee. Our sources say the person who did the unmasking is very well known, very high up, very senior in the intelligence world, is not the FBI. That person's now been identified as Susan Rice. It's not James Comey, in other words. It's Susan Rice, who was identified as the person who did the unmasking for political purposes. They wanted to know who the incidentals were for political purposes. Adam Housley at Fox, unmasking the names and then spreading the names was for political purposes that have nothing to do with national security. Another tweet, our sources say it had everything to do with hurting and embarrassing Trump and his team. I will also note, Mr. Housley said, my sources are not Trump people. They are just frustrated with the politicization of our intelligence agencies. Here is Housley on Fox and Friends this morning. Brian Kilmeade says, tell us about the story that may have changed the story.
What we've learned is this from multiple sources, is that it's all about intelligence gathering methods. The fact is a lot of these men and women in the intelligence communities did not want to speak about what's been going on because they were concerned about those methods being known. But now they figure they might as well at least clarify things, since Nunes has been leaked to by someone they don't know, or at least they tell me they don't know. We know that there was this. There was electronic surveillance of Trump and the people close to Donald Trump, including some supporters, for up to a year before inauguration. That information was disseminated, we're told, through NSA channels. It's unprecedented the way this was done.
Trump was right. When he threw that grenade back at them, it blew up in their faces. They're not used to people fighting back against a media onslaught like this. They're used to people resigning. Adam Housley was not finished.
This unmasked information, these names of Americans who had done nothing wrong, was disseminated to all of the NSC, some at DOD, Clapper, Brennan, basically the people at the top. They also say, I'm told, that Rice knew about this possibly as well. Now, I know there's some reports out there that she was the one that ordered this. We do not know who reported this because we have not spoken to Devin Nunes about it. So we don't know what papers he saw. Our sources don't know what papers he saw. They just tell me the information about unmasking names from Donald Trump and his team and his family was disseminated to a very select few at the top and was done so for a significant amount of time. And that is blockbuster, guys.
Right, and those are the people who then took it to the media. Now, let's bring Nunes back into this. Nunes goes to the White House. He goes to the Executive Office Building, 4th floor, National Security Council. They have up there all of this. He looks at it. He then calls a press conference and announces what he's seen and tells everybody he's taking it up and explaining it to Trump. And essentially, it's this, that there was legal surveillance, and it had nothing to do with Russia. There was legal surveillance of Russians and other foreign actors, and what he learned was that the Americans, those Russians and other surveilled people we're talking to, those Americans were asked to be identified by the Obama administration. They were unmasked for political purposes. He thought Trump should know this. So he tells Trump that. Next thing that happens is a pencil neck, Adam Schiff blows a gasket, claiming that Nunes has no right to be doing that. He should have shared what he learned with the committee and with the Democrats on the committee. And therefore, Nunes should recuse himself. And therefore, Nunes should resign. And therefore, Nunes should commit harikari. And therefore, Nunes should resign from the House. And therefore, Nunes should apologize for being born. And therefore, Nunes should leave the country. Then Pencil Neck went up there and looked at it himself. Now, in the midst of all this, Pencil Neck said that he knew there was collusion between Russia and Trump. He couldn't contain himself. He so desperately wants this to be found that he prematurely spoke. Then Nunes paved way for pencil neck to go up there and see the same stuff Nunes saw. So Schiff goes up there thinking that they've got Nunes, because Nunes saw stuff he shouldn't have seen and then released it prematurely in the ways he shouldn't have. Then Pencil Neck saw it and shows up on Sunday shows and withdraws or retracts this idea that there's proof of collusion and says there isn't. And we're back to square one. We don't know anything, and that's why we need to keep investigating. And folks, there isn't anything here. This story is not Trump and the Russians. I'm sorry to be so repetitive. The story is the surveillance that the Obama administration was engaging in of Trump and who knows who else. Now you say, this is awfully hard to believe. No, it isn't. This is my point about liberals and who they are. They weaponized the IRS against conservatives, didn't they? They most certainly did. They have done any number of things, take over police departments on the basis that they're racist after things like what happens in Ferguson or in Baltimore. The idea that people who are closely associated with Bill Ayers and Bernadine Dorn would not surveil their enemies. It's much easier to believe that it would happen. This is why liberals want power. This is the kind of thing they want to be able to do with it. So it's not by any stretch hard to believe for me. Well, we must take another obscene profit break. We'll do that and be back right after this. Okay. What a shock here, folks. The Senate Judiciary Committee voted along party lines, but that means the Gorsuch nomination moves on to a full vote in the Senate later in the week. Do you know that no nominee for the Supreme Court, I think I'm safe in saying this. If I'm wrong, I apologize in advance. But I don't think a Supreme Court nominee has ever been filibustered. Now, the media wants you to think that it's a minor detail, that it's part of the process, that it happens all the time, that there's nothing unusual here. They act like it's standard practice. Nobody ever fact-checks Chuck Schumer's lies about that. I know Abe Fortas was threatened to be filibustered, but he withdrew his name. Snerdley's in there even now looking to prove me wrong. But I don't think I am on this. The Republicans just had the Republican committee members, Judiciary Committee just did a short press conference where each of them took a turn at the microphone, and they all guaranteed that Gorsuch is going to be confirmed by Friday. And what's going to happen is that if they have to, they'll go nuclear, which means get rid of the requirement of 60 votes. I knew I was right. No nominee's ever been filibustered, Supreme Court. And the media wants you to think, common practice happens to many of them. No, it doesn't. Never has happened. Now, right now it takes 60 votes to confirm a judge to the Supreme Court. 60 votes for what? Okay, they've just had the committee vote. Gorsuch prevailed there. It was a strict party line. Not one Democrat on the committee switched and voted for Gorsuch. Not a surprise. It's very partisan. The next thing that happens is they have to have a vote to have the vote. In other words, in order to move the nomination to the Senate, they have to get 60 votes before they can have the vote. The 60 votes is to, quote-unquote, break the filibuster. There isn't a filibuster going on. In this case, they don't make the people filibustering go to the well and talk for hours. They just let them pretend that that's happening. The way you stop any filibuster is 60 votes. So they need to come up with 60 votes. If they can't, the Republicans only have 52. If they can't find 8 Democrats to join them, well, then it's nuclear option time. And that would return. See, what would actually happen here is returning confirmation votes to simple majority. That's the way it always was until fairly recently when this filibuster stuff was put in. So this is actually going to be a return to what was a previous norm. Now, the Democrats are making a tactical error doing it on this judge. They should have waited until there was a more controversial pick, or one of the libs vacates and Trump picks a conservative to replace a lib. That's when there's going to be an actual nuclear blast. The Democrats are going to go bananas. One other thing before we get out of here on this business of unmasking. If Michael Flynn had committed a crime, in other words, if in talking to the Russian ambassador, Michael Flynn had said something about lifting sanctions on Russia, then they could go get him. That would be not right. But he didn't do that, which is why they're having to manufacture all this supposed evil. It's going to backfire on them, folks. I need to save soundbite 6 and 7. Tom Perez is lunatic leader DNC for tomorrow. We're out of time here, folks, but a barn burner of a kickoff to this week's broadcast excellence. So glad you were here. Each and every day, I'm glad, and I thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and we'll see you back here mañana.